This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft, because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. Hello and welcome to this week's Storyworks Roundtable. Today, Kathryn, Robert, and I are talking about managing an ensemble cast, and well, I have some opinions on that, but I'm going to reserve them until we get the conversation rolling. Robert, why don't you start us off?
Well, yeah, it's typical, obviously, and you get a lot in epic fantasy where you get the ensemble cast, and perhaps we can lay the blame for that at the feet of a certain J.R.R. Tolkien. And everybody wants to do the fellowship idea. But there is, of course, in that particular story, a very clear main protagonist. But you do come across authors who will make a claim that no one of their characters is more important than the other. And I fear for them there, because that, I think, is very difficult to pull off. Mm-hmm. But also, if you are going to have more than just multiple points of view, but an ensemble that has to drive the story, that's a lot of moving parts, and I've definitely steered away from it, even though I enjoy well-written versions of those types of stories. If they're poorly written, then you find that there are big swathes of it where you just skip because you want to get to the next character, mm-hmm. Which is similar, obviously, to multiple points of view as well. But also, you can find that certain characters, the author's given them a task to do, and it just, okay, what's this all about then? But when they're done, mm-hmm. when they're crafted really well, I think for me, it's the climactic moments where the ensemble does what the ensemble is meant to do, and does something that no one single person could do by themselves. I guess is, to me, mm-hmm. that's the point of having the fellowship. I guess
right.
Is the fact that it wasn't Frodo who actually threw the ring in. It took Sam to carry him up there, and it took Gollum to bite the finger off. So it takes a village to raise a child. Is it the same with an ensemble cast? I don't know. And do you still need that one single anchor to carry it through? And in my mind, you do. I would always advise that, but of course, as a leader, you often remind us anything's possible. You just got to make it work. So
right. And I'm going to say yes, affirm yes. You need one single protagonist, and then refer back to the caveat, the golden rule here, that you can do anything so long as you do it well. But affirm yes on having a single protagonist, even in an ensemble cast, because our readers need somebody to attach to. We like a hero. We like a leader. And if you look at really well done ensemble stories, there's often one clear protagonist at the top of the pyramid, but everybody has a different skill set. Everybody is bringing mm-hmm. something different to the table. You never want redundancy in your ensemble cast. And then as the plot shifts and the conflicts they face change, the different members of the ensemble get to come to the front and be the hero for that movement, be the hero for that particular conflict. And then as the story grows, we can feel like everybody's on a more equal footing than we maybe did at the beginning when we were first attaching to a protagonist mm-hmm. and getting into the story. So there's definitely room for evolution.
Yeah, the ebb and flow, I think that's one of the secrets to it, isn't it? And again, if you look at Tolkien as a bit of a masterwork there, you've got some very clear ebb and flow. You've got enemies that become firm friends, with Gimli and Legolas, and then you've got the side stories, but that end up being critical, with Merry and Pippin going off with the trees. Mm-hmm. So I think there definitely is a lot of planning involved to put it off well. Mm-hmm. Still keep the main protagonist, but allow ourselves to attach to the others. Because I think the danger is if you say, well, they're all equal, then what then happens is that your reader may attach to the one that doesn't save the day or the one that isn't instrumental at the end, because someone's going to be more so than the others.
Or the one who gets killed, or whose story thread fades off into the background as you get into book 2 or 3, or Or
the one like me, you just simply forget to include and realise that you've got to rewrite your next draft.
Oops. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And a big problem I see in people's writing is that they throw in everything in the kitchen sink. They want to introduce their fabulous ensemble cast that they've spent weeks or months developing, and they love all of their characters. So, the reader opens the book and it's like you just dropped an anvil in their lap, and that's not an effective way to draw your reader in and introduce your reader to all of these players and all of these different backstories and skills and talents and subplot threads and relationships that you're going to weave through. And so when you start with the single protagonist, you get drawn in with that one character and that one thread. And then something develops and we meet somebody else and we learn about them. And then we meet somebody else and we learn about them. And so there's a spiraling effect. And so the reader takes in this character, this set of information, this set of need to know to get into the story. And as things expand in a manageable way, we grow to understand and love everybody, and you develop that ensemble without that kind of anvil effect of just flattening the reader. Like, here, take it, love it all, do it all now. Which, just furthers the case for starting with one protagonist and then letting things evolve if you want that team feeling or that ensemble of heroes.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note here that an ensemble does not necessarily, everyone in an ensemble cast doesn't necessarily have a point of view. Like, this is different from a multiple point of view issue. Can be a multiple point of view issue, can become a multiple point of view issue. But oftentimes when you kind of start with an ensemble cast, you still have that like one point of view person that you're following, and then just going to continue to use Lord of the Rings because it works really well here. But you have Frodo, right? And you're following Frodo's point of view, and here he goes, here he goes, here he goes. The only time that we split that off and get another point of view is when somebody has to go elsewhere for the main plot, right? Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, they're going for a specific purpose. Let's go rally the troops because we have a war on the horizon, right? They're not going on a completely different mission. It's not a separate story, right? It's still in service of the main plot, which means it's still in service of the main protagonist or the main person in your ensemble cast. The second you said this, Robert, I immediately thought of Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Also an ensemble cast. Right. It's like kind of a heist novel, right? So then you have your main character, but they can't accomplish their job without all of their ensemble. But your main character is the one that's been tasked to go get this, right? You go get this. That's the main plot. The ensemble helps the main character with the main plot. You may get one of their point of views, but only because they're not with the main group. And it is pivotal that whatever they are doing out here is a part of that main plot. They have to accomplish that task in order to come back into the team. So, difference between the two.
Yes,
but dependency is key, isn't it? And I love what you said about Frodo, because when he's on screen and when he's active, he's the POV. There are moments where he's on screen, but he's not active because he's unconscious. And so naturally, of course, you couldn't have his point of view. So that's really clever. So I think that's a really smart observation.
Yes, and another pitfall with multiple POVs and ensemble casts that I see all the time is writers give the wrong character the point of view in the moment. And so if you identify a single protagonist at the top of your pyramid, which doesn't mean it's the only person with a point of view or with a heroic role at some point, but is definitely the main protagonist, then you're always going to know who gets the point of view in any given scene, because you won't give it to somebody else unless that character's not there, right? And the point of view always has to go to the one with the greatest stakes, with the most to win or lose in that moment. So say that protagonist is out of that scene and, you know, supporting character A and supporting character B are in the conflict. Whether A or B gets the point of view depends on who's going to be the most moving, empathetic, effective point of view for that moment. And, you know, unless this guy's dying and you need to have the other one witness the death, it's the one who's got the greatest stakes, right? Who's the most engaged in that conflict.
Yeah, that's right. You don't just choose it because it's convenient for the plot. It's not, you know, it might work plot-wise, but it's not going to attach the reader in the same way. I think also it can be lazy to bring in points of view on an ensemble cast. And I'm not saying that this actually happened in the Expanse series, but that starts out with, from memory, I think it's just the two lead characters, maybe three actually, in the first books, but it does start to expand. So by the time, you know, you're up into book 6 and 7, we've probably got 5 or 6 points of view, and they've actually become interesting. But the first time one comes in, you know, you're already 3 books in, you've never had this character's point of view, but they've always been a close part of the crew, so you know them really well, and then all of a sudden you're in their head. It was a little disturbing, jarring at first. You go, whoa, hang on a minute, this guy, okay, but then the writers do extremely good job of attaching you to them quite quickly. So there's definitely I would say that it's a masterful job, not easy to pull off. I would be scared of doing that. So you've got ensembles where you introduce them initially, and then they become POV characters as and when possibly needed.
I want to point back to what you said about it being jarring, though. You know, because although you said those writers did it very well and you accepted it, and in the end it was effective, best practice is going to be decide what you're doing with your point of view from page 1 and be consistent with it, because you are creating reader expectations. And if you don't pull it off as masterfully as you say these writers did, then what happens to your readership? What happens to your reviews, to your following, you know, to their loyalty to your characters?
Exactly. They've got to know how to recover you from that jar. You know, that moment of friction, because at that moment I could have said, I'm done with this, and put the book down.
Right. Or you start skipping every other chapter because you don't like that point of view, and then...
Yeah, because you haven't spent
what? I've never done that, ever.
Yes. Yeah. I wouldn't do it. I would just stop reading the book. I would say, okay, nope, sorry, you lost me.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because some of those books that do that, I am just fine with the character as an ensemble cast member, right? Keep them in the team. I love them in the team. I don't want to hear from their head, right? Yeah. And as soon as I do hear from their head, I'm done. Right? But if they keep showing up, it doesn't bother me. In fact, I may love them. They may be one of my favorites, but that doesn't always necessarily mean that you want to be in their head. So,
And I think what you said, Kathryn, is really smart, that it's, you know, we can't conflate the ensemble with the number of POVs required. And that, I think, is a mistake that you see debut or new authors do, is they, okay, well, I've got these 4 characters and, you know, they're all equally important. So therefore they've all got to have their time as a point of view character. And I will relate to my own experience there. I mean, my science fiction series, albeit in a little lull, is "Hey, look, we have an ensemble character. We're trying to take a point of view right now for those watching on YouTube."
Yeah, she's trying to steal the microphone.
I want to be part of
She's
this
already
podcast.
stolen the spotlight.
Yeah,
I'm barely
no one's
listening to you guys. I'm just watching the baby.
That's right. We have a new POV who's stolen everything.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
right.
And if you're on audio, get over to StoryWorksPodcast.com and
right
check
now,
her
yeah.
out. Are you ready to take your storycraft to the next level? StoryWorks Fiction Online School has courses available right now, from micro courses on character traits to master level workshops on plot and building characters. There are also live workshops with your instructor in the classroom with you every week, guiding your progress and workshopping your manuscripts along the way. All students enrolled in StoryWorks Fiction, whether active in a class or not, can take advantage of the monthly free live Q&A calls with Alida. Check out StoryWorksFiction.com today and take your storycraft to the next level.
Are you going to talk too? Okay.
My current work in progress, it's only ever going to be a single point of view, and it's first person present tense, but the cast is it's growing.
Mm-hmm.
It is an ensemble cast. They're split off and going in different directions, and I think actually this probably points to one of my difficulties in the book 2 plot, where I have a moment where I've decided to leave about 80% of the supporting characters. The protagonist makes a deliberate choice to leave them stranded on a planet. So then they have to be off screen for several chapters and some key points of the book, and I think, okay, well, how do I get them back? What have they been doing in that period of time? Have they just been like non-player characters in the game, just wandering around in circles?
Yeah.
Oh well, I'll just be there when I come back to them, because they've been important characters in the past. So if they've been important characters in the past, they've got agency. I've given them agency. Therefore, they would have been doing things. So it got me stuck.
So did she strand them somewhere?
Yeah.
So like Castaway. So when she gets them back, somebody's missing some teeth. They've got some fresh scars. They've lost a lot of weight. Hair is long.
Right. That's it.
Yes.
And they're pissed.
Yeah. Yes, they're very pissed. Ooh, I like it. How to write ourselves into corners.
Well, and that's a choice that you get to, but it's kind of fun because, like you said, I've made the choice already, right? Yeah. They don't get a point of view, right? Mm-hmm. Only your main character gets a point of view. So then it becomes all about what comes out of that and where's the conflict and how have these characters grown without you seeing them. And yeah.
Right. And if you had given them a point of view, you would have expanded your work exponentially, because then you're stuck with either completely dropping those point of view characters out of the reader's sphere, out of that story, or following those characters onto that planet and showing the reader what's happening and continuing their arcs and, keeping us engaged with their perspectives. And so that can expand the story, but it can also tie your hands in a really negative way, sort of forcing you to maintain those points of view instead of letting the story and the readers just follow your protagonist and just go where you've decided to take them. Yeah,
it can slow things down. And as you say, it gives you a much bigger writing problem, a different writing problem, maybe a more time-consuming one because it requires words on the page. Mine's a thinking problem,
right?
Which is still going to require some words on the page to deftly accomplish that. And I specifically wanted it anyway because I wanted an enlightenment type of arc as part of the problem. For the protagonist, where making choices that are impulsive put people in danger, and this is part of that. But in the past, those impulsive choices won the day, but that doesn't always work. Mm-hmm. So that was part of my point. Is how do you navigate that as a as a newly minted hero or heroine in this case. So yeah, it is definitely a challenging problem, I think, when you've got an ensemble cast and you deliberately write some of them out for a while.
Right.
You're disengaging your audience from them, and then you have to re-engage them, and you haven't gone point of view with it. So there's that. So I think I find them fascinating things to it's definitely not the simplest thing, and yet if you write in series, you'll probably find that your cast inevitably grows because you're in the middle of drafting something, and all of a sudden the character waltzes in, and then they stay.
Yes.
Whoa, okay, this is really cool. I like this character. yeah, but now I've got 20 of them. What am I doing? I could juggle 3 balls, but 20.
Right. Well, and I like how what you're saying, Robert, about having now the issue of re-engaging the readers with this ensemble cast when you bring them back, and also your kind of thought experiment of what's happening to them while they're stranded. But in the meantime, your hero's story continues. And so maybe without all of the ensemble around, your readers are more invested in her and, kind of falling in love with her or deepening their love for her. And her skills have to grow because she can no longer call on somebody else to do those things, to bring their skills to the table. Yeah. So her self-reliance and her skill set has to evolve during this period when her support team is elsewhere. So that's actually really great for your hero's arc.
Thank you. It's given me a few extra ideas and new problems to solve.
Good.
Yeah, and I was thinking about something else as well to do with that when they're off. Oh, yes. I also remember in terms of speed of writing as well, I was listening to a fairly recent podcast, I think from the Six Figure Authors, and Lindsay Barocca was saying in terms of production that she finds it much faster to turn out, books, to publish books with 1 or 2 POVs, but the moment you get an ensemble cast where you've got multiple POVs, they just take longer to write.
Yeah, of course.
Well, you say of course, but it's for many people, they might not realize that is a blinding flash of the obvious, that, be careful what you're taking on there.
Yes, I mean, every point of view character has to be developed significantly, because you are creating not just a figure who walks on the stage and does things and talks, but somebody we experience internally as well as externally. It's like in the previous episode when we were talking about In an Instant, and Kathryn was saying at the beginning of the novel, the family of characters are kind of stereotypes. You only get them through the point of view character's lens, and her understanding of them is fairly shallow. But then once that point of view character dies and has more of an omniscient take a fly on the wall take, not entering other characters' heads, but being present for their private moments, her understanding of them expands, and so does the readers. Now we get to see them as full human beings. They evolve. And so, if you've got a supporting character who is even a primary supporting character, but not a point of view character, you are only working with them from an external perspective. You only know them as well as your point of view character knows them. But when you give everybody that point of view, your work just, skyrocketed, because for each of those characters, you now have to give them distinct worldviews, distinctive, internal voices as well as speaking voices, distinctive backstories, takes on everything they bring to the table just blew up.
Yes. I like the fact that we're making the distinction between an ensemble cast and multiple points of view, because they are very easy to conflate. I think, especially for new authors, they think that if they've got an ensemble cast, they must write multiple points of view. But the thing to remember, I guess, is that multiple points of view alone do not generate an ensemble cast.
Right. And you can have an ensemble cast with a single point of view.
With a single point of view, as I do. Yeah, exactly. Interesting.
Yes, it is.
Very interesting.
I think random thought in terms of ensemble casts, and if you want to like go look at a bunch of why ensemble casts work, but you really want that one protagonist. Sorry, baby sounds. TV, police procedurals, Law and Order SVU. Not anything without Olivia Benson. Like the FBI shows lately, they all have one person that they follow. CSI, NCIS. Like they have that one person that you really are attached to,
Yes.
and that drives all of the story, but they have a team around them all the time. And I know in TV, the point of view is different, right? Because you can follow people around differently. But it's a really good way of looking at an ensemble where realistically you're attached to one, maybe two, in terms of actually following their story beyond the plot. And then you enjoy the other members of the cast, right? But I just think TV police procedurals and that sort of genre does that really, really well, where you're hooked in and you're anchored by one main character. But then you have a really dynamic, and sometimes dynamic in terms of changing faces and everything, ensemble cast that they need in order to be able to accomplish the plot every week, right?
Right.
So
yes, great example.
It is, and when you missed my connection, my response to what you were saying about Frodo before, when you went on your baby fetching mission, the subplot. And you made a really good point about Frodo, is that whenever Frodo is on screen and conscious, in other words, if he's on the page, you're in his POV. And that's different to The Expanse, for example, because even though Holden is the main character, you can often be in somebody else's POV and he's on screen and he's taking a firm control of the action. So I don't know, actually. I'd have to go back and look at Alida's criteria there for whether, in actual fact, the character with the biggest change or the biggest stakes was the POV in that particular scene. That'd be interesting to review. I shall let you know. But yes. I think a good rule of thumb is, if your most important character is on the page and you've got an ensemble cast, you probably should at least look at them taking the point of view charge, which therefore then means that scene should be one where they have the most to lose.
Yes. Yep.
We got bouncing babies on screen.
We do, and my thoughts were going somewhere, but I don't want to make this conversation last an hour and take us down a whole other trajectory. It might be a separate episode soon. I'm just like, ooh, yeah. Any final thoughts on ensemble casts? Why, yes, Amelia.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what she thinks.
Oh, perfect.
That's right. We bring in, every time we bring in a new character, they bring in new issues.
If you're listening to this podcast, you are probably a writer, and you've maybe heard me talk about the Storyworks reading series. It is the new branch in the Storyworks family tree. It is a literary journal podcast. That's right, a hybrid, a literary journal for your ears, with a print anthology at the end of the year of the best of the podcast. I am open for submissions, and I want to see your best prose right now. I am taking both fiction and creative nonfiction. You can read the guidelines and submit your work at storyworkspodcast.com/submit. What are you waiting for? It's time to see your stories published and sit on the other side of this microphone from me. Have a conversation about your storycraft. Thank you for listening to the Storyworks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.